A completely demented Donald Trump was ranting and raving like a lunatic last night. He was yelling at reporters, calling them stupid. He was slamming his hand on the table. He took to social media at around midnight and finally addressed Thanksgiving. In fact,
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
A question about this tragic shooting in Washington, D.C. U.S. officials say that the suspect worked very closely with the CIA in Afghanistan for years, that he was vetted, and the vetting came up clean.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess. It should have never taken place. If we're going to go out, and we would have gone out because I had everybody ready to go, we were going to go out with strength and dignity and precision, and we would have left from Bagram, and we would have kept Bagram, by the way, because of its very close relationship to China and where they make their missiles. But when you let the people come in by the thousands and thousands and thousands, they made a terrible mistake.
Disturbing. Let me just tell you what went down. So we know that earlier in the day, earlier evening, Donald Trump held a press conference where he called a female reporter stupid. He said, "Are you stupid? Are you dumb?" Because she asked a question about the fact that former President Biden's administration did a deep dive vetting of anybody who came in from Afghanistan. And in fact, it was Donald Trump who granted the DC shooter asylum this April. So Donald Trump was asked a very basic question about the vetting that maybe Trump did or did not do, because Trump was the one who ultimately granted this individual asylum. Trump couldn't handle the questions. So Trump's like, "Are you stupid? Are you stupid?" Then Donald Trump took to social media, and here is what he posted. We have the message right here. And then the official White House account says, "Read every word," because they want people to read where Donald Trump calls the governor of Minnesota the R word.
Kayla, I want to start with you. Can you break down for us what the president has been saying, what we're hearing from the White House, and how many people could be impacted by this?
Antonia, in the aftermath of this shooting, the president is really ramping up his crackdown on immigration with a focus not just on people who are in this country illegally, but also legally present immigrants. Last night, he announced this permanent pause on migration from all third world countries. We're still seeking clarity about what countries those could be. But here's what we do know. There is a sweeping review that was underway before this shooting of refugees mostly admitted under the Biden administration, though we understand that could be years outside of Biden as well. About 200,000 refugees could potentially be impacted by that review, which could entail re-interviewing some refugees. And there also is this review of green card holders from so-called countries of concern. It's a group of 19 countries. And the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services issued new guidance yesterday saying that there's going to be new country-specific factors that they say will help identify someone who could potentially be a threat to public safety and national security. They say that could include an assessment of a country's ability to issue secure identity documents. But this could be anyone with a green card from these 19 countries, including Venezuela, Cuba, Afghanistan as well. And this all comes after Wednesday's shooting and criticism of one specific program known as Operation Allies Welcome. The president was asked about an inspector general report of that program. Take a listen.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in.
Did?
Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful.
And Tony, I really think it's important to put in context that the suspect in custody was granted asylum under this administration, the Trump administration, even though the president continues to blame Biden for initially granting him humanitarian parole back in 2021. He also worked with the CIA in Afghanistan, which would have required extensive vetting, and all of that is raising questions about why exactly he decided to carry out this attack.
Akayla Gardner, thank you so much for your reporting today. Alan, look, a lot of what Akayla just described there would represent sweeping changes to the immigration system, to people's personal lives and their families here in the United States. What we've seen in the president's posts and recent comments, to put it diplomatically, leave us with a lot more questions than answers with this latest crackdown. How are you, as an attorney, preparing to even start parsing what this means for the people that you work with?
I think we should start with the text and the text of the Constitution and the presidential powers and its limitations. So many of the things that he has professed, much like he did in his presidential executive orders, are wishes and desires that he cannot fulfill without Congress. So that's the first thing we need to decide. What is the realm that Congress needs to take care of, and then what the president needs to take care of? And then the second thing is to speak to the American people about this extreme vetting, this fiction that you can go to a shelf and pull off extreme vetting, and that the vetting that we are already doing currently is extreme vetting. When one goes to the airport, there isn't an additional line for extreme vetting. There's a line for less vetting, but not extreme vetting. So that's sort of a fiction that we've made. The third thing we really need to be concerned with is framing foreign nationals as national security threats. And that's very dangerous, as we've seen 80 people who have died in the ocean for this very same reason, an attack on immigration. So once we have that contextually framed, then we understand that many of the things that the president wants to do to individuals in the United States will require immigration courts and federal courts and due process. And while those things have been hampered, they're not completely ineffective at this point in time. So that's how we're sort of conditioning our clients right now to understand. I mean, last week or the week before, the president also made a policy that he was tracking irregular movement of foreign nationals in the United States. And the issue has been, and I want to say it clearly, that when you make everyone a threat, then you can't really focus on what the real threats are. And a lot of the issues that might have been able to address this have been moved to taking care of house cleaners and people who are picking our vegetables, rather than handling things that were handled appropriately in the past. Tens of thousands of agents have been reassigned. So that's where we are right now, just in a mess of disarray with immigration. And we've seen this happen after 9/11. That's why the Department of Homeland Security exists. That's supposed to be the extreme vetting that exists. And continuing to tell people that moving the chairs around on the deck really changes your security isn't really effective.
Brendan, the president has used a lot of interesting phrases. There's been some heated political rhetoric in just the last few days. Last night, he said he specifically wants to, quote, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility. So can you help me decode that language in the context of the larger aims, the campaign that President Trump and folks like Stephen Miller outlined for this administration?
I can't decode it, because that's not how we make laws in this country. We set out actual real benchmarks and things that need to happen, and it isn't just up to the whims of the president. But look, obviously what's going on here is this is an administration for whom almost every problem, the answer is cracking down on immigration, whether it's housing prices or food or, of course, crime. To them, the answer is there's an immigration problem. And so it's not surprising that no matter what the sort of facts of the case here are, that they're going to use it as an opportunity to reinforce their already standing policy position here. We know that high ranks of this administration, of course, including the president, but also very senior people there, believe their number one priority is this mass deportation program. Now, of course, the facts of this situation are something that I don't think they probably want to talk about. Now, the person who allegedly committed this crime is nobody we should have any sympathy for at this time. But you're talking about categories of people. The people who worked with our government in Afghanistan were exactly the types that all of us, universally almost, I guess I should say, not everybody, but most of us thought were the exact type of people who should find a home here in America. They risked their own lives to help Americans in a dangerous place. That wasn't that controversial. Now, of course, what happened here is a tragedy, and we should figure out what went wrong. But it's one of those situations where they don't really want to get into the details of why that type of person is here. And I think that we are now at a place where they don't even have sympathy for the people who risk their lives overseas to help American soldiers. Anybody who is not a natural born citizen, they just simply don't want here. And I think that's a real shame.
Michael, if the stated goal here is to make America safer, is this plan, or at least the concept of a plan that we've seen at this stage from the president, is it going to achieve that?
No, not remotely. It is going to make America less safe in quite a few different reasons, which the administration does not seem to have foreseen or be willing to address. The first is that, just as a matter of statistics, immigrant communities commit much less violent crime than, quote, native-born Americans. That's just a matter of statistical certainty. It is what it is, and this administration has never addressed that. So mass deportation is not actually going to put a dent in the crime rate. I suppose if you were only focusing on violent criminals for deportation, you might have some sort of impact, and that's what the administration claims to do. But if you actually look at the numbers of who they're forcing out of the country and who they're arresting, the overwhelming majority have no criminal record. But there's sort of an unintended consequence of this too, which is America's safety depends largely upon the effectiveness of its intelligence communities. And if we turn around today and tell every single Afghani that helped the CIA or the US military that we are not going to have your back in the long run, the next time there is a major conflict in another part of the world, the people indigenous to that part of the world are going to remember this and refuse to help the CIA and the US military. We're going to need translators. We're going to need assets. We're going to need human sources. If we continually throw them under the bus to score political points, there's going to be nobody left in the world who's willing to help us when we need it.
Alan, to take a step back for a moment, do we know if what the president is proposing is even legal? And how quickly do you expect there to be challenges to all of this?
Immediately, there will be challenges immediately. We already know from his first administration, because when we say there are going to be travel restrictions, they're basically travel bans. These are travel bans that he's existing. And while he can definitely hamper the individuals coming to the country from those countries, but he cannot remove the individuals already in the country without some other bearing of an immigration court. And he definitely can't get someone who has a green card instantly removed without a long judicial sort of fight. So with the court clog that exists, we know that this is not a power that's within the purview of the president at all. And what we have found is that this is scapegoating that is used to bring prejudice against certain groups of immigrants, certain types of immigrants, and they're usually immigrants of color and immigrants who lack.
The collapse of the strongman illusion. Trump's political identity was built on one myth. He was the strongman who could bend outcomes, intimidate rivals, and dominate negotiations. His supporters believed it. His opponents feared it. The media amplified it. But the illusion only works as long as the world reacts with fear. Once that reaction fades, the entire myth collapses, and that is precisely what is happening. The collapse began quietly when diplomats began ignoring his threats and waiting for policy clarifications that never came. When governors publicly challenged him without consequence. When military advisors corrected him. When judges overturned his orders. A real strongman commands institutions. Trump merely argues with them. A real strongman shapes outcomes. Trump complains about them. His power was always theatrical, not structural. Foreign governments understood this sooner than Americans did. They realized that Trump's aggression is not backed by a consistent doctrine or long-term strategy. Retaliation no longer intimidates him. It confuses him. Non-cooperation doesn't provoke decisive action. It produces contradictory reactions. The world stopped playing his game when it saw the game wasn't real. And when fear disappears, strength becomes performance. The strongest proof of the illusion's collapse is internal. His own party, once enabling every impulse, now treats him like a risk to be managed rather than a leader to be followed. Advisors leak against him. Allies negotiate behind his back. Donors hedge their bets. Institutions brace for the next outburst. No one behaves this way towards a strong man. They behave this way towards a liability. The collapse is psychological as well. Trump once acted like a man, forcing the world to adapt to him. Now he acts like a man reacting to a world that refuses to adapt. The shift is subtle, but fatal. His anger feels less like dominance and more like frustration. His attacks feel less strategic and more frantic. His defiance looks less heroic and more desperate. Strong men don't explain themselves. They impose themselves. Trump now spends more time insisting he is winning than actually winning. At its core, the strongman persona collapses when outcomes contradict the image. Tariffs fail. Threats fizzle. Negotiations crumble. Allies defect. Rivals strengthen. Every one of these failures chips away at the mythology until only the performance remains. Trump still plays the role flawlessly. The raised voice, the confidence, the defiance. But the audience is no longer impressed. They've seen the strings behind the puppet. A strong man without real control is not a leader. He's an actor, trapped in a role that reality no longer supports. The costume is still there, but the power it once represented has faded.